Welcome into Deep Waters here on ProBox TV, where we take a deep dive into all things boxing. Of course, the big news right now, Ryan Garcia insisted that his B sample be tested for ostarine after his A sample ended up positive. Well, test came back and it's the exact same result. The B test coming in positive, just like sample number one. Of course, that's been the issue so far since his win over Devin Haney in a gigantic upset that has made him a superstar. What is his future? What does this test mean? Paulie Malignaggi, Algieri, Showtime Shawn Porter joining us via Zoom. Well, his attorneys, of course, have come out with statements, and Ryan Garcia is handling it in the calm fashion we all expected him to handle it in. Hasn't even gone crazy on Twitter. His lawyers, okay, of course, released a statement that did have some legalese to it. And here it is. Ryan has voluntarily submitted to tests throughout his career, which have always shown negative results. He also tested negative multiple times leading up to the fight against Haney. All of these factors combined with his ultra-low levels from samples taken on April 19th and 20th in the billionth of a gram range point to Ryan being a victim of supplement contamination and never receiving any performance-enhancing benefit from the microscopic amounts in his system. We are certain that one of the natural supplements Ryan was using in the lead up to the fight will prove to be contaminated and are in the process of testing the supplement to determine the exact source. Okay, now Ryan himself, of course, wild tweets about leaving boxing. I take all the steroids, ha ha ha, you guys set me up. I gotta be honest with you, I only came to work today to see Paulie's shocked face. Go ahead and give it to me. Not even give me the shock face. Not even a little. Not one.
I mean, nothing shocks me in boxing. Come on, that's not really what it's about.
What are your thoughts, man?
It's about, I guess what everybody's we'll all give our thoughts. I mean, I know Chris, he actually is one of the people that explained this to me, because Chris is more so the expert on this stuff. But I've also heard it from another person in the media that had connections to a, what's those kind of doctors called? Lobotomist? What are they called?
Phlebotomist.
Phlebotomist, okay. So here's the way it works, and I'm sure Chris also understands, because Chris partially explained this to me as well. Here's how it works when you're microdosing. So you bigger dose off season, which is not when there's no fights and nobody's getting tested, because boxing is the Wild West and doesn't test in between fights. Yep. And then you're microdosing during camp. And when you're microdosing, it is trapped in the fat and therefore not going into your bloodstream, so therefore it's harder to catch you. When a fighter struggles to make weight, sometimes they're losing all that fat and you get a little bit of tricklage coming out of the fat, and the drugs will come out in small spurts. That's why they're always caught in small doses. And people, the moronic part of the population will say, oh, that's not enough to help him. No, that's just the part that finally leaked
It's the leftovers, essentially.
Yes, and because they struggle in weight, which is also a typical thing when you start to think about it, why guys keep moving up in weight. So there's less struggles when they're doping to make weight, and therefore they keep moving up in weight and keep showing no signs of weakening and no signs of aging and no signs of, we don't have to name names. The boxing's rife with it, But nonetheless, now when I started to learn this part, because every single time a guy fails, I'm always asking questions and I'm always learning a little bit more. And this time, when it came to this microdosing situation, it's a big way to beat even the random drug tests, because it's not going to show up unless you're really draining yourself. So therefore, it makes sense why guys keep moving up in weight. So Ryan was struggling to make the weight, and he failed right at the end. But he passed in the middle of camp. This kind of explanation is an explanation worth looking into when it comes to his failed B test, B sample. As for the lawyers, they're going to play lawyer and they're going to manipulate it as much as possible and mention that he passed those tests in the middle of camp. Well, I just explained to you in the method that microdosing work why he would have passed the tests in the middle of camp but failed at the very end. Because at the very end was when he was drained. Remember, he struggled to make weight. He was drained, and therefore the substances start coming out, which also explains why he's now talking about fighting at welterweight, junior middleweight, super middleweight against Benavidez. You also get a little bit of sense of why he would do that as well if this is the case. So once you know how the science of it works, you start to really put things together. You can reach your own conclusions. If you want to be a groupie, you can and reach no conclusions. But I'm the person who's going to keep thinking about and keep thinking about not just fighters now, like Ryan, but also fighters in the past, fighters that have failed, fighters that have not failed, and so on and so forth. Really puts a light bulb over the situation.
Yeah, Chris, what are your thoughts on the disparity between the reactions, right? We saw his lawyers, as Paulie said, a lawyerish reaction. He passed these tests, it's small doses, contamination, excuses we heard a million times. And the other side of Ryan just going off the rails, yeah, I took all the steroids and I'm going to quit boxing. boxing and already made millions. That disparity as a fan, how do you reconcile these two reactions to the same thing?
Well, first thing first, regardless of how much was in his system, it doesn't matter. This is ostarine. It is a banned substance. It doesn't matter. It was there. This is a qualitative test, not a quantitative test. It's like being pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. It's either in your system or it's not, and it's a banned substance. It doesn't matter how much or how little is there.
And it's banned for a reason.
And it doesn't matter whether it helped that night or not. And that's not the question. The question is, was it in your system? It was. You are responsible. You're accountable for it. And his lawyers know that. What they're doing is they're setting the stage. They're playing lawyer, but they're also being smart. They're setting the stage because now the question is, was it on purpose? Because intent matters when it comes to what's going to come down in terms of his punishment. If it is an accidental dosing from taking a supplement that may have been contaminated, it's a different ruling on how long you're going to be out, how long you're going to be banned, what kind of fine you can do it. If it's proven to be on purpose, which you're actually proven guilty until proven innocent, actually. So his team now has to go and tell them this was not only tell them, but prove that this was an accidental consumption. That's up to them now. That's on there. So we're moving on. Now, just real quick, historically, to your question now, why are there such a disparity? Because people doesn't know how this stuff works. They don't know how this stuff works.
Oh, but in the comments, they're
geniuses.
experts.
They're all experts. But listen, guys, A and B sample. This is what this is. This is why the B sample historically almost never comes out different than the A sample. It's the same sample, guys.
Yeah.
You're putting it in two different vials. Yeah. One of them gets tested right away, which takes a few days because of the laboratory processes. The other sample gets put in storage and waiting for something like this to happen. It's the exact same cycle.
In layman's terms, the same cup of piss.
It's the same.
You just pour some in one and you pour some in the other.
For the non-athletes, same cup of pee.
One is tested immediately. Results come in a few days or a week sometimes. The other one's put in storage for this kind of situation where it's tested again, just in case there was some kind of contamination between taking it and putting it in the vial and then separating it and putting it in the vial again. So that's what all this is for. Historically, it is almost never different, A and B samples. I think it's 99.9% of the time. I can't think of a single time that it was different.
Because it's the same cup of piss.
It's the exact same sample. So a lot of people don't understand that. So they're like, oh no, the B sample is going to be fine. No, it's going to be positive. It was positive last time, and it's also two different samples. It was before the fight and after the fight. So there's going to be contamination in sample before and after in these splits? No, absolutely not. So this is not unexpected. Now, the saga continues. What are we dealing with now? What is going to be the end result of this? And this is where his legal team and his team is going to have to show proof that this was an accidental contamination, and then you got to deal with it from there.
Showtime, you can't go back in time and erase what we all saw, which is the performance against Devin Haney, but you can call it a no contest. How does this affect the legacy moving forward of Ryan Garcia, regardless of the penalties, but our perception of him as a fighter and that fight?
You know, I probably shouldn't go here, but I'm going here, and you guys can cut it out if you want. Ryan is a Christian. I went to church last night, and there's a story that I would like for Ryan to remember or read. The story of David and Bathsheba and Uriah. The long story short, David gets Bathsheba, another man's wife, pregnant, and orders the man to be killed instead of just confessing to what he did and handling the consequences as they come and dealing with it. And it's the whole thing. But I want to give that to David, or excuse me, I want to give that to Ryan publicly, because I need him to know, like, listen, if you're a Christian, stand as a Christian at all times. Don't I'm a Christian now and then I'm blasting you with words that should never come out of anyone's mouth, let alone a Christian. You got to stand on who you are. What's going to happen is they're going to present you with, hey, the A sample and the B sample. These are your consequences. This is going to definitely have a shadow over what he did in the fight. And it's like I said before, we still cannot ignore that Devin Haney got hit multiple times in that fight. But nonetheless, we see now that there could have been something else that added to the power, that added to that whipping hook that Ryan Garcia throws. And this almost, along with it being considered a no contest, a lot of people will also look at this as, yeah, you didn't really beat him, and I look forward to a rematch in this fight.
And Shawn, in terms of going back to David and Uriah, I know that story well. as well with Bathsheba, David, and Uriah. And it's interesting because Ryan is trying to just sort of be sneaky with it and saying, yeah, he's being sarcastic. Yeah, I'm gonna. He's got his lawyers playing it. Well, what did David do to have Uriah killed? He didn't have Uriah directly killed. He had him put on the front lines for the next war, and the men on the front lines typically died. And he specifically desired Uriah to be put on the front line so that he would be killed, not directly, but indirectly. And what is Ryan doing? He's trying to indirectly sneak out the back door and saying, yeah, it's nothing. I didn't do anything. And he's got lawyers playing lawyer and all this other stuff. So very similar situation. Very good example, Shawn.
Well, we'll discuss his future in boxing and the reaction of the fans to Ryan Garcia's positive test when we come back. Welcome back into Deep Waters here on ProBox TV. We are discussing Ryan Garcia, his B sample coming back positive for the banned substance ostarine. Of course, on Twitter, he's kind of taking it not seriously. This is no big deal. Maybe I'll leave boxing. I'm already a millionaire. His lawyers, of course, giving a lawyer statement saying those contaminated supplements. We will discuss his future. Jimmy Smith alongside Paulie, Malignaggi, Chris Algieri, Showtime Shawn Porter joining us via Zoom. Paulie, when you look at this, the future of Ryan Garcia, the guy's already a star. And we know in life, as in boxing, justice is for poor people. Justice is for non-stars. Do you think the punishment in the end will fit the crime?
I'm very pessimistic on this. I remember when Canelo Alvarez, who may still be the star of boxing, but it's sort of trickling over into Ryan Garcia now. When he was the major star and he failed, he was suspended 6 months, which if you look at the Canelo Alvarez schedule, it's basically he's suspended until his next fight, and that's it. So while I'd like to be optimistic, the history of boxing and its reputation leads me to believe that Ryan will just be suspended until whenever he wants to fight next.
Amir Khan got 2 years, right, Chris? Oh, he retired. I forgot about that. Right. So similar kind of thing, Chris. This idea of you're suspended as long as you want to.
Well, it's a two-tiered legal system. It's depending on who you are, how much money you bring to the table, where you're at in your career. But I've been saying this from the outset. This is not going to really affect Ryan Garcia. Yeah, it's going to take that fight away. He doesn't really care. He's going to say, well, I still kicked Devin Haney's ass, and whether it's on my record or not, everybody knows, everybody saw it. And if it turns out to be a contaminated supplement, which is what his lawyers are obviously going to push for, he'll get a 6-month ban, which he wasn't going to fight in 6 months anyway. I didn't think he was going to fight the rest of this year to begin with. So for him, I mean, listen, he's made a ton of money. He feels he got to be able to beat up Devin. Oh, he did beat up Devin Haney.
He's calling out junior middleweights and super middleweights. Hint.
I don't think it's going to matter all that much for him in the long run. This is boxing, unfortunately, and that's just the two-tiered legal system that we have. And and whether it was intentional or not, I'm sure the proof of burden is on them to prove that this was accidental. And if that's the case, it's going to be a short ban, and Ryan will be back in the ring probably early next year.
Showtime, what about the mental side of this? Ryan Garcia, kind of an up and down guy anyway. This idea of these accusations, having to defend himself. Mentally, how do you think he handles this, or does he handle it well? What's your thought?
Yeah, there's no telling. To what Chris just said, at the end of the day, we all saw the fight. And he's going to stand on what he did in that fight. He's not going to stand on what he did prior to the fight. He's going to stand on what happened that night. They're going to take that win off of his record. He ain't going to give a damn. He's going to move forward and just do him. Some people kind of they put themselves in that position where they do whatever they want to do and other people allow it. And that's where Ryan Garcia is.
Well, that might be the future. We will obviously keep up on all the news, but the news coming out of ProBox in terms of our live fights, another Fight of the Year candidate. Last night, we got to be ringside. We'll tell you all about it and the future of both of those fighters when we come back. Well, June 5th is the next time you will see us. ProBox TV Wednesday night fights. The main event, Shram versus Butayev. Don't miss it. Why? 2 fight cards in a row. We've had Fight of the Night, for sure, Fight of the Year, possibly 2 weeks in a row. It's been absolutely incredible. Last time out, it was the Brazilian. It was Jonathan Cardoso taking on Adam Lopez, our co-main event of the evening. Incredible fight and a candidate for Fight of the Year. We brought out the smocks, courtesy of Chris Algieri. Knew we were going to get sprayed in blood. Chris, I got to give you credit. You predicted this one. You said it would be difficult, it'd be brutal, but it would go long. You predicted it going to decision. I think in round, 4? I turned to you, Paulie. It was like, this is not going 10 rounds. Ended up going 10 rounds.
It did.
But it lived up to the hype, Chris.
That's why the champ's the expert.
I love when we make predictions on fights being good and they live up to it. Because so many times we say this is going to be a great fight and then it's not. And that's a real bummer. But this one was, above and beyond. Even better than I expected. I've called a bunch of Adam Lopez's fights in the past. I've actually called a number of Jonathan Cardoso's fights at this point now. And I just knew that stylistically, the way they would match up, not only in terms of their styles. You know, off the top, I think I said this was a boxer-puncher matchup. It really wasn't, because Cardoso showed great boxing skills throughout. Really, really good technical boxer, good fundamentals. And Adam Lopez, to his credit, showed a lot of fight in him. He was more of a brawler at times, not just the boxer. So they both kind of switched roles in terms of boxers and punchers and how they chose to fight the fight. But then also you have the matchup in terms of their body types. Look at them. You've got Cardoso, super tall for the weight class. I kept mentioning on air. 5'10", 73-inch reach at 132 pounds. That's welterweight numbers there.
That's taller than me in both ways.
Yeah, he's the
reach
same
and height.
So he's actually have the same dimensions I do. I'm 5'10", I'm 5'10 and a half, but with a 73-inch reach. So for 130 pounds, I mean, that's really impressive. And he's a puncher. And then you got Adam Lopez, who's got great feet, excellent lateral movement, fires some movement really well. Excellent, well, chin, forget it. But shoulder rolling, firing from those positions and off the ropes, so you're seeing it right there. But man, what amazing adjustments on both guys back and forth. Lived up and beyond what I expected, and it was a fantastic fight.
Paulie, when you look at Cardoso, were you surprised? I know I was, by the volume, the amount he was able to throw, as long as he was able to throw. A puncher like that, a lot of times they run out of gas. He didn't.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, he'd been away for a year as far as having to deal with visa issues and whatnot. So you were wondering, you know, how's his concentration to come right back into such a fast-paced fight? Well, you know, we got our answer last night. I mean, this is a hungry kid who's really desiring to make it to the top of the sport and get into the big fights. We've had him several times on ProBox TV, never disappoints. And you know what I like about Cardoso? He's good, world-class skills, but still flawed enough to have guys take a chance on him, even though he's got a big knockout record. He's hittable, which makes him fun because he hits and gets hit. And at the same time, a top fighter will say, okay, he's got a big knockout record, which typically will make guys stay away from him. But then at the end, you're like, oh, you know what? He's so hittable. I could probably beat him anyway, and it would look good on my record to beat a guy with a lot of knockouts and have a good record. So I think guys may take a chance on him, and he may get some shots at some bigger fights. Again, flawed enough to be exciting, but good enough and strong enough to also be successful. And as for Adam Lopez, you know, he kind of, you know, he lives up to his reputation. You know, he's already been in those kind of fights that Cardoso's trying to get to. Came up a little short, but each and every time he got his respect. And that's why we had him yesterday on ProBox TV, because he's still of the level. That was a very close fight.
Yeah, Showtime, I know you weren't ringside like we were, but you've seen a lot of fighters in this position. You got a lot of knockout power. You may have been blowing guys away your first 15 fights, but then you take that step up against talented opposition. What do you look for a fighter in that position?
Exactly what Cardoso did. You know, he didn't waver away from the game plan, kept his foot on the gas pedal, like you just spoke on his gas tank the entire night. You got guys like Adam Lopez in front of you. You know exactly where this guy's been. You know exactly what he's done. You know that this is going to be a long night. You know he's going to present some challenges to you, but you don't waver away from the game plan. And on the other side of that, we always got to salute Adam Lopez, man. Yeah. It seems like he's one of the more exciting, like, small names in boxing, but he's exciting every single time he gets in the ring. And I really wish other fighters had that mentality that went with the skill and the power and all those other things. Have a mentality to be exciting, like Adam Lopez. So great night of boxing right there for ProBox TV.
Check it out on our YouTube channel, ProBox TV. An amazing fight. It was smock worthy. That's going to be our thing from now on for a fight that's really worth it. But when we come back, the one thing missing from the Cardoso versus Lopez fight, animosity. Well, guess what? We have that in a fight coming up in spades with huge consequences when we come back. Welcome back into Deep Waters. We love action. We love technique. We love the sweet science, but it doesn't hurt when two guys can't be on the same stage with one another in order to build up hype for a fight. That is Scotland's Josh Taylor taking on England's Jack Catterall. That was a press conference in February for their rematch. The first fight, so controversial, it was actually investigated in England. If that doesn't tell you something. But as you guys saw, alongside Paulie, Malignaggi, Chris Algieri, Showtime Shawn Porter, joining us via Zoom, these guys can't even be around one another without putting hands on one another. What's your thought on that and how it affects the fight, Paulie?
Well, competition sometimes breeds bad blood. And, you know, these guys had a close first fight, some controversy involved in it. Both guys obviously felt they won, which automatically is going to make both sides talk bad about the other side side for thinking that the other side actually thought they won. The nerve, right? But it was close, and both guys are going to have that feeling. And of course, that sort of builds up, especially once you sign a rematch. Now all that's talked about is who won the first fight, and both guys feel that they won it. So that breeds that animosity. Now you're going to put hands on each other soon. So that breeds the animosity. It was I don't mind it. Like I always talk about WWE. You stage the animosity, but people still get really excited for the fight. I think this is the kind of thing where people still get excited about this fight. I don't think the first fight was that exciting, even though it was competitive. I get excited about this rematch, seeing the bad blood, because I think this is needed for both of these guys, and it's a win for either guy. Whoever gets the win this weekend, it gets them in a really good position in the 140-pound division, which is a stacked division.
Chris, I'm very curious about this. So you're saying familiarity breeds contempt, right? Second time, I don't like looking at this guy. I'm sick of this guy's face. But there's the side of it of, I like getting under opponent's skin. I'm telling you, in my experience, I've seen that backfire as many times as it worked. You want to piss off your opponent? Sometimes you pay for it in the ring. What do you think about the mind games and the effect on the product in the ring?
I think in most cases, besides this one, it has a big effect. This one, it doesn't really seem to, because I think these guys have actually put hands on each other more at the press conferences than they did when they actually fought. They did 12 rounds with each other. It was a very, very low punch count between both guys. It was a dull fight. It was ugly. It was a lot of wrestling going on, not a lot of punches, not a lot of clean punches landed. Both guys were fighting to win in their respective styles. But the animosity did not carry over. Yeah, maybe in terms of their personalities and the way they were talking to each other in between rounds, but in terms of how they fought, it wasn't like, all right, toe-to-toe, let's fight, let's handle business right here. Really wasn't like that. I don't know if it's going to happen this time. But, Champ, to your point, this fight is more interesting to me. I mean, it's probably 18 months too late. It should have happened right away because of the controversy involved. But
typical of boxing.
I believe that Jack Catterall has gotten better since the first fight. I think he learned a lot in those 12 rounds with Taylor. Taylor was fantastic at that time. Taylor has since lost to Teofimo Lopez. It's a streaking Tio who looked fantastic that night. But I think that Taylor, who may be past his peak, is motivated because it's this fight. So I think we're going to see a very good version of Josh Taylor versus the Jack Catterall, who's actually better than the last time. So I think we're actually going to get a good fight, hopefully a better fight than the last fight. But in terms of the animosity and everything going on outside the ring, for these guys, it doesn't really seem to carry over.
Yeah, Showtime, when you look at this rematch in a controversial victory, a lot of people thinking Catterall won that fight. How much does that burn? How much does that motivate that you got robbed of that victory in your own mind? What does that do in camp when it comes to running that extra mile? What's your thought on it?
Listen, it's for both guys. When you talk about Taylor, I think the fighter always knows the truth. At the end of the day, the fighter always knows the truth. And when you know what that truth is, you got to right your wrongs. You got to come back to the ring even bigger, stronger, better than you were in the previous fight. So I know mentally, Josh Taylor knows if I don't show up, this guy is really going to get me this time and everybody's going to see it. And then for Jack Catterall, I mean, the energy around this fight, I wish we had fights like this in the States where this kind of animosity and buildup and energy was real and warranted. I can't really think of the last time we saw that. I feel like a fight that could have this kind of level of animosity, even though they haven't fought yet, Caleb Plant and Jamal Charlo. I know that these guys had a big riff one weekend. It was Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence weekend. That fight, at this point in time in the States, could be something like what Jack Catterall and Josh Taylor are over there. The energy is going to be, and I love it.
What I'm curious about, Paulie, I'm going to go to you about this. In the gym, does your coach go, here's what you need to fix? You can say in public all day, I beat this guy, I won, da-da-da. Great. Those are for outside. Do you allow that in the gym? Or would you go, yay, he did this right? What's your thought on it?
There's specific game planning in the gym. You're going to, especially with a rematch, you're going to say, okay, we did this well, we didn't do this so well, we want to correct this. We also try to anticipate some of the adjustments you might expect from the other opponent as well and work on those, work off of those things as well. You're game planning, typically at a world-class level, you have a good team and everybody's working on it together. But I love the promotion regardless. I like Jack putting his hands on Josh Taylor. Me personally, that's why I used to like to slap or spit, because this way you still don't cancel a fight. If you punch, you may open a cut. But if I can spit or slap back at you, then you can grab my throat all you want.
That's great. Oh, we're giving out advice here on ProBox TV Deep Waters. That's right. Spit, slap, don't throw hands.
Promotes the fight. Come on.
You learn every time you watch. Don't forget next time. Thanks for tuning in. ProBox TV.